of the hour, and here is today's webinar, which is the DNA of a successful contact center. I think it's going to be quite fascinating. We're going to be looking at a couple of sides of it, of how to manage and motivate people in a successful contact center, and also looking at some of the technology angles and how we also look at it from a quality perspective. So I think we'll tie in quite well. So I'd like to introduce to you our speakers. We've got some webcam introductions for you today. So we're joined by Rob Wilkinson. Rob is from Call Center Connect, and Rob is going to be taking us through the human perspective. So welcome to you, Rob.
Thanks, John T.
And Rob was voted in our poll 2 years ago of the best respected people in the contact center world, number 4 in that poll. So we're going to be repeating that again later on. So we'll see if you have managed to up your profile a bit there, or whether things are slipping a bit. So,
well, I did that on purpose so that I always had room to improve. You see, John T.
Ah, yes, it's tough at the top.
Yes.
There was about 100 people we had in that poll, so that was some pretty stiff competition. Also, delighted to be welcome to you a first timer on one of our webinars, which is Guy Hanna from Business Systems. Welcome to you, Guy.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And Guy has attended in the audience a lot of our webinars, and Guy's going to be talking us to listening to your agents, to your customers, and looking through the business. As ever, we've got the top tips and questions from your audience. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Just if you'd like to get copies of the slides, you can do that from our chat room, callcenterhelper.com/chat. So if you're not already logged into the chat room, please log in, because we'll be going to carry on the discussion there. There are top tips and questions. There is a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates for the best tip. If you want to watch a replay of the webinar, that's on the same link as you've dialed in today, and a white paper will be sent to you by Business Systems. So just a little bit of reminders. Discussion today is on the chat room, and you can download the slides. So just log in there. Once you're logged in, callcenterhelper.com/chat, you can download the slides from the button in the top right-hand side. So I'm going to ask a question now in the chat room, and that in 1 or 2 words. Could you describe how engaged are advisors in the contact center? So if you could put how engaged people are in the contact center. I'll give you a couple of minutes to type that in. Danny is typing away there. I think a lot of other people are dialing through. So we've got Daniel, Kathy, Saul, Moideen all taking through. Kathy says they're somewhat engaged within the contact center. Also got Zoe and Aidan typing through. Daniel says not engaged at all. Ryan said moderately engaged. Saul says it depends on the customer. I'm an outsourcer, so that's quite interesting, a difference there. Zoe says by and large, or for the main, very engaged. Charlene is saying fairly engaged. Bronwyn says, quite an interesting one, it depends on the time of day. So I don't know, Bronwyn, if you find when people are more engaged than others, I guess towards the end of the afternoon maybe more tricky. Aidan says fairly engaged but struggle with challenging customers. So I guess that's quite an interesting one. Justin says fairly engaged, and Jazz says not very engaged. So Rob, that's quite a wide range of engagement there.
Absolutely. Yeah, hopefully that's something that we can maybe help some people with today, and also maybe some people will be able to, even if it's just recognising what they're doing well, because it sounds like there's some good stuff going on there as well.
Okay, and we're also going to have a look at agent rewards. So just like to ask this question: how do you reward agents? How do you reward agents? Do you use something like a cash bonus? Do you use one of the very topical ones, chocolate or sugar? Do you use thank you notes or cards? Do you use a recognition board, or do you have time off? Or if there's anything else that I've not put, if you'd like to put that into the chat room, you can vote for all that apply. So let's have a look at the votes that you've got coming through there. and I think just a couple more to come through. So let's just close this and share the results with everyone. So, funnily enough, actually on the list, Rob, chocolate comes actually bottom of our list there.
Well,
so,
I'm very disappointed.
So I don't know if that's because Cadbury's now been taken over by Kraft, or if there's some other factor there. So whether we should perhaps be using more chocolate, I don't know.
I think it's interesting actually, because when you look at thank you notes or cards / recognition board, they're very personable human things as opposed to a token gesture, I guess. So it's good that they're strong. I guess no one's going to be massively surprised that cash is king.
Yeah, indeed. And Guy, time off is quite a popular one. Is that something you see a lot?
Yes, certainly. It's actually something we'll touch on later about profiling our agents. Of course, different personality types will engage differently, but time off's a great one, whether it's just starting your shift an hour later or getting that afternoon off. And I suppose with our impending World Cup, getting time off for those England games might be a great reward to have in the contact centre.
Yes, indeed. So time off also quite a good one, because it doesn't necessarily need a huge amount of approval to do that. So quite a nice system. So we're now going to just hide the results there, and I'm going to pass across to Rob Wilkinson now, and Rob's going to take us through some of the human factors that are involved in the DNA of a successful contact center. So Rob, would you just like to pop your slides up on the screen?
Thank you very much. Can everybody see?
Not quite yet, but what I'll do is I'll just pass back to me, and I'll pass back to you again, Rob, and then hopefully the change will take there.
Okay.
There we go.
Fantastic. Great. So over to me, I guess. So,
yes, we can see it all.
Fantastic stuff. So thanks very much, John C. I'm not exactly famous, so although you have introduced me, I'm going to touch on a couple of things just so that people maybe understand what potentially qualifies me to be worth listening to for 10 to 15 minutes. I've worked in the sector for over 15 years now in the UK call centre sector, starting out as a lead generator on the phone back in '99, and as a lot of kind of call centre success stories potentially can do, over a relatively short period of time. In 2007, I was running multi-site operations in a couple of different countries. So I've been very lucky, and I've really enjoyed the journey. Since then, I've been providing consultancy services to call centres around the country, as well as running Call Centre Connect, my call centre agent level recruitment business. But that's enough about me. I want to get on to everybody else now, because today it's not all about anything to do. I'm basically going to talk about a few things that I've learned over the years and why I think they're important in the world of contact centres. But in turn, I want everybody to keep their ears open for the one or two nuggets of information that they might find useful and that they can then put to you straight away in their contact centres. So you don't get off easy today, everyone. You've got a job to do yourselves. So I'm going to move very quickly into what I'm going to talk about. We've already done a poll a little bit just a short while ago on one of these, which is useful, and I'm basically going to be talking about what I call the 2 big E's that all call centres should live and breathe. And when I say live and breathe, I actually really mean that part of it. I'm not just put it in there for the sake of it, because these are things that should simply be, they shouldn't simply be painted on a wall in the contact centre, or be thrown into coaching conversations. They should form part of your culture, and they should be business as usual. And if you need a reason why, certainly in terms of engaged, I know it's often hard to kind of put a business case for this sort of thing together because it's very people-centric, but if you look at a study that was published just earlier on in the year by Aon Hewitt, it took them 2 years to put it together, so I'm not going into too much detail about it, but one of the findings in there that they've proven that highly engaged workforces are 70% more productive and 40% more profitable. So if engagement wasn't important before, hopefully it will be now. So the interesting thing is, what a lot of people don't realize is that there are 3 different types of employee engagement. Recognizing these helps to identify the people in our teams who are engaged in different ways, and equally importantly, it helps us to identify, obviously, those that aren't engaged at all. what I'm going to do very quickly is I'm going to go through the different types of engagement so you can understand what they are and maybe look for people who it applies to. And then at the end, I'm going to do a quick success checklist of things that you might do yourselves in your operations to kind of engage your teams more. So I'll get cracking with that. Intellectual engagement. These are the people who are thinking hard about the job and how to do it better. These are typically your ideas people, the ones who don't complain and find problems, but instead look at issues as opportunities to improve and go away and find solutions instead. Intellectually empowered people thrive on things like secondments. That's a really good way of kind of promoting the engagement with these guys. They, something that maybe potentially they can get to see an idea through to completion, maybe as part of a project team, that sort of thing. I would consider myself to be one of these, obviously intellectually engaged. So yeah, keep your eye out for those types of people. Effectively engaged, the second one. So these are those people who are feeling positively about doing a good job. They're the people who can't wait to tell you that they've received some fantastic customer feedback, or maybe they've smashed their next target. Something that's really important here is to avoid mistaking this effectively engaged behavior as people who are maybe being needy or maybe lacking in confidence. Because it's actually a type of engagement, and if you recognize it as such, you can then reward it, and if you reward it, guess what, you get even more from them. So yeah, just a little bit of a tip there. Effectively engaged people. The third and final type of engagement is socially engaged people. These are the people who basically can't so these are the people who love to share their ideas with their peers. These are actually socially engaged people. They are actually often the intellectually engaged people too, because they've got to have the idea in the first place to then share it. Something that you need to do with these people is you need to help them to promote the engagement to others, because it's better coming from them than it is to you, and they will help to grow the engagement across your entire operation. They're often so they're often having ideas, and in order to support them, what you want to do is you want to help to build their credibility, because if you sponsor them, if people see you as buying into what they're saying, then they will too. Also support them with how to communicate to other people, make sure they're doing it in the right way. That way that will get more buy-in from other people, and again, it will spread like wildfire. So socially engaged people, really, really important for growing. So I'm going to go on to my checklist for success now, but before I do, I just want to share a quick win with everyone. This is something that you can immediately implement, one of those nuggets maybe that I mentioned earlier on. So the exciting thing here about all these kind of different types of engagement is that by identifying people who are engaged in one or maybe two ways, this gives you the opportunity to increase the engagement in those people in the other ways as well. And because they're the types of people who are engaged, they're more likely to thrive if you kind of encourage them to do so. So think about the people in your operation now who maybe fall into one or two of those categories, and ask yourself, is there an opportunity to engage them in a different way as well and get even more out of them? And you'll be surprised at just how many people there actually are that you might be overlooking. So anyway, how do you then get them engaged? Well, the success checklist. I did it, right written there in big. I know there's no I in team, but there is on my post-it note. And it basically so that you can remember the success checklist, because if you notice, I've been incredibly creative and named everything beginning with an I. So in order to engage your teams, you need people to feel like they're part of what's going on. You need to give them a sense of achievement. That's the whole I did it part of it. And there's kind of three key parts. There's three parts of the checklist that help you to do that. So the first one, involve and identify. If you're carrying out some sort of research into how engaged your teams are, make sure you involve them and get their input. They'll know anything that might be contributing to any low engagement. They'll have loads of good ideas about how to make improvements, but more often than not, we don't directly ask them, and that's a big opportunity missed. It's okay to identify, causes of disengagement, but it's equally important to resist the temptation to confront individuals about specific things, because this can lead to a backlash of blame, and that's no good. It's just going to make the employee very wary of speaking up in the future. So, don't do that. It's really important to identify what's working well as well. Give praise when things are going well. This will encourage more of the same sort of activities. It's not just about tackling negative engagement, it's equally about promoting positive engagement. So that's the kind of whole involve and identify piece. Moving on to inform and integrity, it might sound really obvious, but just be honest about your findings with your team. Be willing to deal honestly with the issues that come out from it all, and work with your team to make the necessary changes to drive through improvements. Remember, your teams will be talking to each other during the entire process. They're going to want to hear the outcomes of any interviews, meetings, forums, whatever you do as part of that. And messages need to be consistent, findings need to be accurate, and they need to reflect, what's been discussed. Otherwise, you kind of undermine the whole process. And that's the integrity part, really. So finally, implementing and inspecting. You've got to implement changes. Can't say that enough. After the survey findings are in, employees are interviewed, and we've identified opportunities, it's absolutely critical to make some changes. Changes confirm that you've listened. They show that you care about it as well, that it means something. Not making changes does the exact opposite. It undermines the process. It massively damages employee engagement. Nobody wants to be a part of something that then just gets ignored. So finally, once you've done all of that, and you've got things changed and you've implemented things and you've seen some successes, make sure that you don't let all that go to waste. Review it, inspect it, review the successive changes that you've made, shout them from the rooftops, find out if anything hasn't worked as well and fix it if you can, and then shout about that too. Or if you can't fix it, just let everyone know why not. Quite often, as long as you tell people why you've not been able to do something, they'll understand it and they'll respect it. Remember, it's all about integrity, that bit again. Okay, so I'm going to hand back over to Jonty because I do believe that we might have a poll coming up.
Yes, we do have a poll coming through now. Just get that up onto the screen, and that is how empowered are your agents. So you can vote on all that apply. So can an agent talk as long as they want on a call without affecting their average handling time targets, if you have that? Can an agent send a customer flowers? Can an agent give £20 compensation without needing supervisor approval? Can an agent flag a broken process? And is an agent also able to go off and fix that broken process? So quite a range there. Guy, any thoughts about what would come up top of that list?
I'm torn between flag a broken process and giving the compensation. So those two I'm going to hope are teetering towards the top.
Okay, well let's have a look at what the results have done. I'll share those up on the screen now. And wow, we've got quite a gap here between 83% of people can flag a broken process, but only 20% can go off and fix that. That is that's quite staggering. That I think there's quite a big disconnect we've got there. 63% can talk as long as they want on a call without being penalised, which is great. I think it's a bit disappointing that only 8% can send a customer flowers. So where there's some other arrangements on that would be quite good. So we're going to go and look at empowerment. Rob's got some slides on that in a minute. But just a reminder, it would be interesting in the chat room if you could say if there's anything that you've done in your contact center that has helped agent engagement, and we'll pick those up in a short while. So just hand back to Rob now, and Rob, if you'd like to share your thoughts about how to improve empowerment.
Fantastic, thank you, John. Can you see everything again? We're back on.
Yeah. Yeah,
fantastic. Really interesting, actually, that 20% to see how little people seem to be empowered. Actually, quite worrying. It looks as well like a lot of people want to make a difference in terms of some of the other results, but maybe their hands are tied. So hopefully that's going to set me up quite well here. So yeah, empowerment. It goes hand in hand with engagement, really. Empowerment. You've got to have engagement with empowerment and vice versa. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Engagement without empowerment is like an IKEA wardrobe without the instructions. It's something that you really want to do, but it's only really going to end in tears. So I guess the question is, how do we empower our teams? Once we've got them engaged, how do we make sure we keep them engaged? Because if you don't empower them, that engagement is going to go and it's all gone to waste. So for me, there are 3 key ingredients to this, and that is educate, environment, and enable. Once again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each one of these and then just go through a success checklist at the end, which hopefully will give you some useful tools to help you to do it. So moving into educate. When thinking about empowerment, try to avoid thinking about it as something that one person does for another person, because it's not. And this is one of the most common mistakes leaders and managers make. People seem to think that someone, usually their manager, is responsible for bestowing empowerment on them. And as a result, team members tend to wait around for that empowerment to be bestowed upon them. And when that doesn't happen, the manager sits there at their table and asks, why isn't everyone acting in an empowered way? Which doesn't work. It's a vicious circle. Instead, it's important to educate everybody that empowerment, you need to think about it in terms of a process of an individual enabling themselves to take action. They do it for themselves, then they control their work, and then they can make their own decisions. And as soon as people realize that, they're not going to be sitting around waiting for someone else to give it to them anymore. They're more likely to go off and come up with some ideas of their own. So that's the education part of it. The environment, really, really important. We have a responsibility to create a working environment that fosters the ability and desire of our employees to act in empowered ways. Recently I heard a really great quote on a call center blog that said, how am I supposed to think outside the box when I work in a cube? And for me, that really sums up the importance of the working environment, really, in terms of empowerment. I've searched high and low for a really good description of what a really empowered environment does look like, and I'm going to kind of read that out to you now. So take notes if you want. Empowerment is a desirable management and organizational style that enables the employees to practice autonomy, control their own jobs, and use their skills and abilities to benefit both the organization and themselves. Notice I don't say anything in there really about barriers, because the environment isn't about the barriers. That's the next bit, and that's the enable part of it, which I'll come on to now. So as managers of people, we have a responsibility to remove barriers that limit the ability of our teams to act in these empowered ways that we're talking about now. And to clarify, for me at least, a barrier is anything at all that someone on your team views as restrictive to them doing their job. So, this is things like the things people use as, sometimes it's excuses, to deliver, and sometimes it's genuinely that they're genuinely believing that there are reasons for not delivering. So it's our job to kind of remove these. And I'm going to make a statement that not everyone likes, but as managers, I believe that we have the choice to take all of these barriers away. So I'm just going to say that again. As managers, we have the choice of taking these barriers away. Now, the reason that I say some people don't like it when I say that is because right now there's going to be some people out there that, having heard that, might catch themselves thinking that they don't have that choice. As a manager, they don't have the choice to take those barriers away. I would suggest that if that's the case, you've probably got some barriers of your own. Maybe you need to reflect on why you're not acting in an empowered way, because you're going to have to do that before you try and encourage your team to be empowered, because that isn't going to work. You need to lead by example here, and you need to kind of look at how you do that. The good news is, how exactly do we do that? I've got a checklist for it, so we're going to go to that now. So moving on, the Empowered Success Checklist. Again, 3 areas, and I'm going to go through those now. So vision and goals. We need to help people feel that they have something bigger. It's got to be bigger than just themselves and their individual job. Make sure that your teams understand the organised overall mission, the vision, the strategic plans and everything. Even better, if you can, include them in the planning itself. Get their input on the overall plan. They'll own the direction, and they might well surprise you with their commitment and their competency. When possible, involve your team in the actual goal setting as well, because they're the front line, they're the people on the floor. They can add value, knowledge, ideas and insight and experience that you're just not going to find from anybody else. So, they've got to be involved in both the vision and the goals. The next thing is trust and feedback. You need to trust the intentions of the people to do the right thing. Nobody comes up, no one wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go and work and do a bad job. Trust them to come in and make the right decision. Trust them to make choices that, even though they're maybe not exactly what you do yourself, they're still going to work, they're still going to have a positive impact. This can improve things dramatically. When employees receive clear expectations from their manager, they'll relax and they'll trust you. They'll focus their energy on accomplishing things instead of wondering and worrying and second-guessing everything. You're going to delegate work to people, but make sure you don't just delegate drudge work. Massively important to make sure that they're going to important meetings, things that influence product and service development and things that influence decision making, maybe involved in projects that people and customers are actually going to notice and not just a whole load of admin. Also, don't forget to provide frequent feedback to the people. This is the last part here, feedback. They've got to know how they're doing. sometimes the purpose of feedback is reward and recognition, not just as a coaching tool, so remember to do that. But that said, speaking of reward and recognition, the last thing here, listen and reward. Provide a space where people are comfortable communicating and sharing. Make sure you listen to them. Make sure you ask them questions, and listen to the responses. Don't, whatever you do, tell grown-up people what to do. It doesn't work. And when a member of your team brings a problem to you, for example, and they want to solve it, ask them, what do you think you should do to solve this problem? Or ask them, what actions would you recommend we try instead? And then listen to what they've got to say, and ideally put it into practice. Eventually what will happen if you do this is your team will feel comfortable trusting you. You will likewise feel comfortable trusting them and their judgment. That will encourage them not to ask about the similar sort of situations in the future. Frees up your time, frees up their time, and everyone becomes more productive and positive. Okay, so I'll finish this off with just one thing, which is about the reward. In the same way that a salesman needs a bonus incentive, empowered employees need to feel valued. So you need to reward and recognize people who demonstrate empowered behavior, and then they'll keep doing it. So that's my checklist over with. Thanks for listening to me waffle on, and back to Chauncey.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Rob. Some quite interesting insights there into how to empower agents, and it'd be interesting to see your own great ideas there. We're now going to go to the bit of where we can add in top tips and questions from you. There is a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates for the best tip, and we haven't had a huge number of tips in, so I think the odds of winning that are particularly good now. So if you'd like to get your tips in. So the first one we've had by Zoe says, we have a virtual suggestion box that we discuss in a monthly management meeting, and let everyone know all suggestions and keep them updated on progress if a suggestion is being implemented. I quite like that suggestion guy.
I feel like Zoe's been looking into my presentation in a bit, but yeah, definitely, that's a really interesting one.
I guess there's always a danger with virtual suggestion boxes that people put in, good ideas, and before too long you could have, say, 400 ideas in there. It's how do you communicate? They can all be good ideas, but there's probably only about 10 or 12 that you can do in any moment of time. So I guess that's the key challenge on suggestion boxes.
It'd be interesting to see if Zoe's doing that and whether or not they do any peer-to-peer voting. Can you see all the suggestions by others? People vote for the ones they think are the best, and then you can really filter out the creme de la creme of tips and suggestions.
Yeah, and there's a tip that's come in from Danny on the chat room. It says, we let our agents help to implement their own great ideas. I think that's a great one. In fact, these broken processes that people see, I guess that could be quite demoralizing if you're flagging them all the time but not able to get involved in fixing them. Okay, here's an opinion from Bronwyn, who says agents are rewarded with time off for meeting targets, and also gift cards and vouchers. That came in earlier on. Kathy has said, include staff in the business planning or next financial year. What is it they would like or think we should do? Which I think is quite interesting. Rob, that's quite a good way of increasing engagement.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, how much are you going to own a process? How much enthusiasm and passion for something are you going to have if you were actually included in the whole decision-making part of it so early on? Yeah, fantastic. Awesome.
Nick suggests we should evaluate agent calls regularly and run one-to-one coaching sessions to improve performance and therefore results. I know we're going to be talking about listening to agents in a short while there, Guy. And we also have, we let our agents help to implement their own great ideas. We covered that just a minute ago. Having a staff rep always goes down well. It's quite old school, but still works. So staff rep, this is sort of staff representative.
Yeah, so we see that quite a bit with it's usually like a senior team leader or a senior agent on the floor who is trusted to speak for the group. Yeah.
Kathy says use a group within the agents to represent all suggestions. I guess that's very similar to the staff rep that we had. And Nikki has a tip, agents' ideas have more power than they can talk about specific customer experience of the problem. And this helps to move management. So I guess, Rob, it's about telling the right stories in a way that...
Yeah, I had this. A great example of this were a member of one of the teams in a contact center that I was running identified and showed us how much time was being wasted at the beginning of a call when you're doing your kind of security checks and that sort of thing. And whilst we know that there's a lot of things in terms of Data Protection Act and all that kind of stuff, they were able to show us an opportunity to cut that very small part of the call down. But when you add up the time that was saved off the back of that across all the calls that the contact center was taking every year, the cost savings were incredible. And that came directly from someone on the front line who said, yeah, you've just listened to my call and you're giving me feedback on X, Y, and Z, but what about the bit at the beginning? There's an opportunity there, and we ran with it and we made changes as a result of that, and it really worked.
Yeah, very good indeed. We've got another one in from Julianne, who says we have an excellence award scheme with £5 vouchers. Sometimes it's just not the amount of an award, but actually just small, sort of almost like small acts of kindness can work quite nicely.
Yeah, and the wording is great there. It's rewarding excellence, and it really just creates that atmosphere of what you're aiming for. It's just not good, it's not just average, but excellence. I really like the wording of that one.
Okay, well, we're going to jump into another poll now, just before we get into Guy's presentation. And the poll is, which channels do you regularly monitor in your contact center? Is it phone calls, email, social media, web chat, or postal correspondence? So if you'd just like to put it in, which channels do you regularly monitor? It'd be quite interesting to see the results of that. I'm guessing phone calls are probably going to come up quite high there, Guy. What about social web chat? Do you think that's going to be?
Well, we were discussing this earlier with social media. It's the just because you're not listening doesn't mean they're not talking about you. So it'll be interesting to see how many people are monitoring what's being said about them.
Well, let's have a look at the results here, and yeah, quite surprising. 95% of the audience are monitoring phone calls, but it drops off quite significantly. Then 59% email, 24% postal correspondence, 22% social media, and 15% web chat. Rob, that seems quite low, even on some of the old traditional things like postal correspondence. I would probably expect it a bit higher than that.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, the postal side of it, that's surprisingly low. For some reason, I'm not surprised that the email side of it monitors closely. I don't know if it's as easy to monitor. Guys probably knows more than I do about that, but I think the scary thing there is social media, because if you're not monitoring social media, everybody else certainly will be, because the format, the phone calls, not every single customer can listen into all the phone calls that your guys are taking, yet we focus all our attention on them. Yet social media, every single customer can go and have a look at how you're interacting with people on your Facebook page. I think that is quite frightening.
And I think it's also quite interesting that of all the different channels we've got here, phone calls are probably the more throwaway, and that people forget conversations more. But email, social media, web chat, and postal correspondence all leave a very pronounced evidence trail that's very easy for the customer to, to record what people said. So, yeah, kind of a little bit scary. So, so Guy, I know you're going to be taking us through sort of three facets of listening to agents, customers, and the business experience. So, Guy, if you could put those up on your screen right now, and we can take you through your ideas.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Yeah, the reason we polled that question is because a lot of what I'm about to speak about now is all about listening. Who are we listening to, and what are we listening for? Because when Jonty posed the question of what's the DNA of a successful contact center, when we talk of DNA, we're talking about all those building blocks that make us the people who we are. And so in the DNA of our contact centers, we decided to focus on exactly that, the people. Who do we need to be focusing on, and why? So we've split that really into the three pillars, the three people that are really holding our contact centers together. Of course, there's the customer, but then again, which ties on nicely with everything Rob discussed, and the agent and the engagement and the empowerment there, but also from the business, the people that are setting us the rules and really setting us the tasks that we need. So really our advice from Business Systems, we're an independent technology expert, is to really make sure you're listening to all three of these groups before embarking on any new technology or really any new customer initiative. But we'll start off with listening to your customers. And I suppose we start with that because we've all heard the old adage of the customer is king, or the customer is always right. But it's really about how are we embedding this in the culture. Rob mentions culture. Are we actually putting this in every single thought process that we do? Are we putting the customer at the heart of it? And what I want to promote is creating that listening culture, listening across all channels to find out what we're doing well and what we're doing badly. So I'm going to start off with a Bill Gates quote. Your customers are your greatest source of learning. The reason we look at this is really because nothing tells you what you need to do better than finding out what you've done wrong. So the key thing is to go out there and really find where those unhappy customers are. Are they the ones that Rob suggested? Are they the ones on your Facebook page or your Twitter feed, kind of giving the feedback that you don't want the rest of the world to see? Or are they in a specific forum? But the importance of finding them is so you can really pinpoint the source of their pain, find out what went wrong. And that's perhaps why it's interesting that 98% of phones are monitored, because perhaps we're running to social media because we've had that bad phone call. So can we cut the problem at the source to make sure that there's none of those negative experiences being shared? But we all know that listening to phone calls, like we said, is that foundation. But my problem is this is often only done by perhaps a compliance team or a quality assurance team, and are there other people in our business that can really be finding that valuable? And actually, how easy is this to do with the technology that you've got in place at the moment? So it'd be great if Jonty could put up the poll that we've got just to really find out who is it that's listening to our phone calls in our contact centre.
Yeah, we've got a poll now, and it is who has access to recorded phone calls in your contact center. So the votes that you can select all that apply to these. So can agents listen to their own calls? Can team leaders listen to calls? Can senior management and the board regularly access phone calls in the contact center? Can marketing access them? Or can product development? So this is sort of looking here specifically at regular access rather than inviting them in occasionally to have a listen, but sort of almost routinely able to listen to those. So I'd just like to vote on those. I think it's going to be quite interesting. I'm guessing that agents are probably going to become quite high up on that list, I'd have thought.
I'd like to think so. It's something we're definitely seeing an upwards trend in.
Well, let's have a look at the results. That's interesting. Yeah, about half of people, agents, are able to listen to their own calls. 72% senior management. That's much higher than I would have expected. But marketing and product development are sort of well down the list there. It sort of strikes me that.
And it's a surprise because we're talking so much about customer experience and customer journey, and when you think of the people that look after your website or look after all the emails that you're sending out, that's your marketing department. And if that's the cause of some of the pain and some of the dissatisfaction, we really need those kind of people listening as well, so they can make the adjustments in their realm to stop really those negative experiences. So it's definitely very interesting to see.
So I think, Rob, there's quite a disconnect there overall. What are your thoughts on that?
Do you know what? It's not good. I think Guy's made a really good point about if marketers are responsible for your message, then why aren't they hearing the message, the results of that message? But unfortunately, I don't think I'm necessarily that surprised, because quite often there is this kind of you find a bit of a silo situation in organisations, certainly bigger organisations, and it does drive the problems that Guy's mentioned, which there's just a massive disconnect between what one person is saying to a customer, setting their expectations in a certain way, and then when that's not delivered on, they wonder why.
Yes, I think some good advice of sort of when you're back this afternoon, having a look at who could you open up access to. I know there's security concerns, but I think certainly marketing and product development, as well as actually agents being able to self-improve, could be areas to improve. So thank you for that, Guy.
Thank you. And And like we said, there is a reason behind why people can't do that. And simply, it's like the lady we have on the screens problem here. We just can't listen to everything. We've got thousands and thousands of customer contacts. So it's really, we've got to pinpoint and evaluate just how many of these are we actually listening to. And then again, who are we sharing this information with? So if we are only giving that access to our team leaders and to our agents, are we, as Rob would say, are we empowering them to flag those to marketing and to product development? They might not have the time to do the listening themselves, but are we letting the information that we're finding flow within the organization and actually fall to the right people? But secondly, we've got to be careful about just how accurate this information is. Listening to one phone call about one person who's got a real issue with your IVR or a real issue with your website, it's not 100% accurate. You know, if we're only listening to 2%, or with some of the best organizations only 5% of those calls and those emails, we really need to be wary of how accurate this information is. And while we can't listen to everything, of course, if I put my technology hat on, technology certainly can. And something that's been a topic of many a webinar is, of course, speech analytics. You know, the ability to allow technology to do all the listening for you, to listen to 100% of not just those calls, but we're talking about those emails, we're talking about those web chats, we're talking about social media. As long as you're capturing it, empower the technology to do all the listening for you. And it's all about what you do with that output. Can we spot those trends about why people are calling, or what they are happy about, what you've done really well, or as Bill Gates would encourage us to do, what are they frustrated with? Because really that's our source of learning. And what was great was the story Rob just told about the agent who was able to gather the evidence to make the change, because it's one thing to flag a process, but if we're able to really gather that evidence and look at all of our customer contacts and say, no, this is a regular trend, this is happening a lot of the time, that's what's really going to prick the ears of the executive leaders to make the changes. So I really like the story from Rob earlier. But of course, like I said, it's not just the calls. Customers are contacting us on a variety of different channels, but it's also the passive channels. It's the things they might not be talking to us, but they might just be talking about us. So what can we do to be listening to those as well? And Facebook and Twitter and social media and forums as well is a real great place to find where you're unhappiest, where they're congregating. They often find each other much quicker than we can find them. And it's really how do we target them specifically to solve some of their frustrations. So our advice here is, we can see the very smug gentleman on the screen. He's got everyone tapping into all of their interactions, and perhaps you've thought about analytics in the past, perhaps dismissed it as not for us or maybe too expensive, but it is well worth, you know, hearing from experts about the changes that have happened over the last few years with changes in technology and with hosting now available. Everything's a lot more accessible, and it'd be well worth kind of putting your head up and having a listen about what some of the innovative ways this has been used as well. And I'm going to touch on what Rob said as well. I'm really enjoying what he was speaking about, and I'm going to add a third E to his list. And it's really just to remind us on why it is so important to be listening. And that's empathy. That's really putting ourselves in the shoes of our customers to understand why they might be the problems they're having and why they might be having those issues. Because as I said, all of those words that we're using at the moment, we're saying customer experience, we're saying customer journey, we're talking about user experience. How often are we actually putting ourselves in our shoes and trying to use our own services or use our own website or go through our own IVR? It's incredible how many people don't know what their current options are there. So we really think organizations, as they do talk about customer experience, they might shock themselves to find that they actually don't have the deep understanding of their customers that they thought they did. And that's not an issue with the people you've got or what you've been doing. It's just a byproduct of I suppose, being so drilled into your day-to-day operations that perhaps you haven't thought about that empathy piece. So yeah, my prediction is really empathy is going to become a huge part of that in really feeling what your customers are going through a lot more.
And I think there's a danger we all do, that we often listen to conversations of the agent with the customer, and we ignore that whole journey through the IVR. And actually, if you know, when I've done that and listened to those journeys going through, you know, I've been absolutely staggered by, you know, sort of the need for some form of redesign. But we put these systems in, and they get left for, you know, months, if not years, without any great change on them.
I know, and another great example of that is I sat with some team leaders doing some call monitoring just recently, and they were skipping the 2 minutes of hold that the customer was on in the middle of a call. Of course, for the team leader, they just want to be evaluating what's being said, but no thought was being attributed to actually, no wonder they've come off that hold period a little bit more frustrated than they were before because of the length of time. So that's why we're talking empathy, really feel what they're going through and see it from their perspective. But this is all very negative, so listening is important for other reasons. It's to pick out gentlemen like this, that shining example of things you are doing differently, and perhaps finding those agents that have gone a little bit off script or a little bit off the cuff to do things differently, but actually have seen some fantastic results and been able to really excel in the service that they were able to provide. So while we started with a Bill Gates quote, I'm going to finish with a Walt Disney quote on it's all about finding those things that we do want. It's not just about listening to see what goes wrong. It's about encouraging you to listen to your happiest customers, your most loyal customers, so you can find the stuff that is really working and also find the agents who are best at delivering it. I suppose the key point, as we mentioned at the beginning, we keep saying the customer is king. So actually, who better to tell us who our best are and what we're doing best than the customer themselves? So I'm going to quickly go on to now listening to our agents, because they are the people that are delivering those frontline services. And Rob mentioned a lot about listening to our agents, about empowerment, about engagement, and I'll touch on that slightly. But on my point on those quality checks we were talking about, too often they're being used as a stick to beat agents with, but not as a tool for coaching and development. And this might be why you're getting disengaged agents, because we're only looking at the bad stuff they're doing. So we've asked people in the past what they've ever thought about what agents think of their QM process. And it'd be great just to hear some of the stuff in the chat room as well about any team leaders, any managers that have asked their agents what the responses have been, or if you were going to ask the question today, what can you expect to hear? So it'd be really interesting if people could get engaged and start discussing that. And I'll share with you a few of the things we've heard. Some of the popular ones is it's too big brother. We're not involved in that process, that it's just them looking at us and it's not a two-way stream. Another one is they don't understand. I'm being asked to do this on every call, but without the reasoning behind it, I can't really put my all into it. I can't put my heart into it. And then lastly, it's too tick box. You're telling me to have a conversation, yet you're yes knowing everything I'm doing, and perhaps it's not the appropriate way to be scoring. So I don't know if you've got any of the stuff, Jonty, that the others are saying. Is there anything?
Well, I've just got Kathy, Ryan, Kelly typing through. Kathy says, unfortunately, reps feel like quality is out to get them versus seeing it as a bit of a process. Kelly as saying perhaps get the agents to listen to their own calls, maybe
fantastic.
A better way to engage it. And so Christina and Nicole are still typing away, so we can come back to those in and Ryan as well while they've got it. So he says our agents love it and see it as a way to continually improve themselves. So
and brilliant, and that's exactly how it should be. It's there as a development tool, and that's what's really going to empower the agents, as Rob says, because they feel like they're getting the development they need. No one likes being not good at their job. Everyone wants to do the best they can.
Nicole says, we use call quality feedback to both correct and praise our agents. Don't have scripts, but do operate within frameworks and can opt to listen to each other's calls. Zoe says, perhaps one of the reasons why the agents think it's great is because our QA coach is brilliant. So, Ryan has said the reward system is unfair because being trained in two product lines expands your ability for bonus, but a mistake in either product line excludes you from bonus completely, which could be seen as an unfair approach to quality. And I guess that's the bonus meant to make things better. But it can actually, it's the law of unforeseen consequences when we bonus people.
Exactly, and that is one of the dangers, and we'll come on that later, of the rewards program, is it does just as much to disengage as it does engage. But with quality, technology is something that really can help here, because the people we talk to, They often don't make the changes because they feel quite limited by a printed out sheet or perhaps an Excel spreadsheet. And really some of the tools out there now you can create any new evaluation forms and reports within minutes, and that gives you the opportunity just to try something out and be a bit creative. So I'd really encourage people, to get the technology there so you can make the changes and see what works and what doesn't. And as people say, onboard your agents, get those staff reps in and let them tell you what they think they should be evaluated on and what they think is fair. We'll quickly touch on a disengaged agent because this is a great image I found on Pinterest of the doodles of someone working in a call center who said I wasn't paying much attention at work today. And some of the reasons we have disengaged agents is very much like the problems we have with quality, but it can also come down to scheduling. Scheduling is something close to my heart as well, and there's nothing worse than being worked too hard because you're getting too many calls, or perhaps you're just not getting enough calls. You're sitting there and you're carrying on with your doodles. So with something as important as your staff, who a recent poll said take up around 75% of an organisation's costs is on your staff and your labour. So you really need to think intelligently about what's managing them and take seriously what you're doing to distribute that staff. So have a look at your workforce management tools. How quickly can you get a schedule in advance? How easy is it for people to swap trades and change holidays? Because that's something that can make a real change to just how engaged that agent is. One last thing is the gamification piece when listening to our agents. Rob did some fantastic work earlier on profiling. I'm just going to touch on that a little bit longer. There are generational gaps in our contact centres. While we say the average age is 26, depending on your contact centre, that could be vastly different. So have a look, and you don't need to incentivise and reward everybody the same. If people are different, if they're motivated in different ways, look at the different personality types. And I think going back to Rob's slide is the best thing for that. But also have a look at those rewards. As we mentioned, they can be dangerous, so have a think about the type of the personality type and what might be more important. Some great stuff like bidding on shifts. The better your quality scores, then you get an advantage on being able to look at your shifts. That's a great one. Time off is one of my favourites, so I'd really encourage people to look at that. I'm going to quickly wrap up here with the last one, listening to your boss, listening to your business, because when embarking on any new technology or initiative, you really have to have a look at all three of these pieces to really get the right balance to ensure these work. We mentioned workforce management there, and I love this image. Workforce management is often described as getting people in the right place at the right time and making sure it's the right people. To me, that sounds a bit like a taxi service, but what we want to avoid is the kind of queues that we're looking at there. And if anyone does want to touch on workforce management, we're happy to have some questions on that later. But like I said, I just wanted to talk about that balance on there, because any imbalance, like I said, can greatly aid or hamper the success of any projects. So a few of the bits we touched on, like call recording and quality and analytics, make sure we're seeing it from all three perspectives. So the customer, they want that personalized service and they want their disputes resolved quickly. Whereas the employee, the agent, they are the people that want the development and they want the coaching. So are we aligning those two? And with the business, are we making sure everything's remaining compliant but also operationally efficient? And we mentioned workforce management as well. It's that same three-pronged attack in that our customers, they want the service levels and they want the quick wait times and they want it from an engaged employee. So to get that agent engaged, can we give them a flexible shift and can we actually shift them dependent on their individual lifestyles? But as a business, we only want to be paying for the agents that we're actually using, so let's make sure we're optimizing those as efficiently as possible. And there's perhaps one last piece I just wanted to touch on, which is a technology that might not be relevant for everyone, but is actually something quite new and something quite exciting, and I think is a perfect example of that balance in action, and that's voice biometrics. So for those asking about security questions, and Rob touched on security questions earlier, they can be a real pain, and they can be one of the worst things for a customer and for an agent. And what it can do is it can automatically identify your customers just by the unique characteristics of their voice patterns. So we'll never have to remember our mother's maiden name again, which was one of my favorite sayings. So let's think about, like I said, from our customers. They don't have to remember passwords or security questions. They can get straight to their issues and have their problem solved really quickly. An agent is relieved because they're not being scored on a compliance check, and they don't have the burden of the company's data security on their shoulders. And then as a business, what's incredible is we can actually start shaving off sometimes up to 90 seconds off our call, and in some organisations that's 25% of your call volume, and if you start multiplying that across all your security checks and all your calls on the year, that's some really incredible savings. So I just wanted to thank everybody really just for listening to me. Guy Hanna, like I said, I'm from Business Systems, and we're an independent technology company, and we've been doing this for some 25 years, and that's why we're always urging people with any of this technology, any of those initiatives, have a look around and talk to some of the experts like us, because if you're not seeing things from a customer approach, an agent approach and a business approach, these things may fail to get off the ground. And if you want to understand some more about some of the stuff, some of the analytics, the gamification, the attrition, the training, we'll be distributing our contact center guide that we did in conjunction with My Customer. There's some great stuff in there. So download it, have a read, get in touch, and join our debate. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Guy. I think some real nuggets, some real food for thought there about, are we doing the right things the right way there? So some great ideas. So we're going to do some questions and top tips from the audience, and we'll just see if we can get the webcams back on now, and see if we can bring Rob's webcam in as well. So the first tip that we're going to look at, sent in by Zoe, he says we have communal QA sessions whereby all agents listen to the same call and give live feedback to the agent whose call it was. They seem to take it on board better, and they're learning more skills. There's certainly a self-evaluation, but this is kind of like a sort of team-based environment.
Yeah, so that's really interesting, and I like the idea of the communals, getting everybody involved. We've seen some great stuff whereby all separately an agent, a team leader, and perhaps someone from quality will all do a separate evaluation and then kind of map their results and their differences on a big sheet of paper, and it's a great opportunity for discussion, and the more agents you can get involved on that, the better, and start debating, are we assessing the right things, and are we asking our agents to do the right things?
Indeed. So social media allows us to have more insight into how our customers are really feeling, even more so after a phone email experience. I think it's a great one there. Bronwyn says agents having meetings where they can talk freely about any issue they have or what they think would help the business. Rob, I think that's very much in line with what you were suggesting earlier.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no big brother element to that, is there? Which is something that I think was touched on earlier on by some of the guys in the chat rooms, that there is sometimes a feeling of big brother whenever you're doing any sort of feedback thing, and that sort of approach just does away with all of that. And
we've also got a tip in from Mike about, in terms of technology. Mike says analytics out of any technology can be the easiest to build a compelling business case. If you focus on possible savings in areas such as complaints and retention, these can have huge financial benefits alongside scaling ability for QA and root cause analysis. So, Guy, I think that was in line with some of the thoughts you were talking through.
Definitely, and what's key, I think, in what Mike's saying is pick one thing to target on, and then the other things will fall into place. But if you can really focus on just that one area when trying to implement something, that's when you can really get the best thought and the best value from it.
Yeah, Katie says in terms of technology, IVR experience, often your customer's first impression of you, we've had a huge impact with simple structural changes to the IVR, and more importantly, wording and tone. Certainly we tend to write IVR messages as written messages, but actually not thinking of them, they're actually spoken messages. So simplify tone and grammar is often quite important. And then enabling agents to design and simplify a broken workflow works much better than senior management guessing their way through something they don't use every day.
Agreed, and that's probably something I missed out on. We spoke about empathy for the customer, but like I say, from a management point of view, let's have empathy for our agents as well, and start to think through, they know these processes better than anyone.
Christina said, we have monthly rewards issued to employees nominated by their peers. Winners are broadcast on the recognition board and awarded time off. So that's a sort of a medley of different ideas there, Rob. Seem to have lost Rob's mic there. Justin says, we evaluate agents' calls and send them the feedback directly, so they're praised on their development made wary of areas that need focus. Nikki said, here's a tip. internal best practice virtual groups. Best performing team leaders could help coach the team leaders in teams that are struggling. Great collaboration, very effectively. I guess we often focus in on agents, but not necessarily on team leaders. Robert, is that very much in line with your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's you know what, everything about coaching always seems to be geared up about the people who were on the front line, and we forget the people who are supporting those people. You know, coaching isn't a negative thing. Coaching is about maintaining and improving performance levels.
So Nicola said to help teams understand and buy into our organisation's vision, they create their own team mission statement as to how they're going to work towards the organisation vision and create their own quarterly goals to work against and achieve their team's mission. I think this is some great stuff here. They engage with the process as they have decided their own measurements and own the results, which helps them with their empowerment and engagement. So I think that's really nice, actually. Teams setting their own goals rather than coming down from on high. Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for in terms of tips. If you could type into the chat room and say in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about the webinar today? Slides are available on Call Center Helper, so just go to callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. And the replay will be available through that same link or link you've dialed in today. That will be available later on this afternoon. And it just remains for me to say thank you to our speakers, thank you to Guy, and thank you to Rob, and thank you to everyone in our audience for attending. And we won't have a webinar next week. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. So look forward to seeing everyone then. Thanks then. Bye-bye.
Thank you.